The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Well, happy Monday, everyone. Hope everyone is great. It is, what is today? Monday, July 15th, year of our Lord 2024. This is James Gailliard. Welcome to the James Gailliard Show. I was hustling. You know, technology works until it doesn't work. And I've been frantically working on my ROS, my run of show. What I'm going to talk to you about today. And then I want to save my document. I put it up in the iCloud like I always do. And I'm waiting for that thing to render and render and render. And every time I hit my other device, it's not there. It's not updated. And so I've got my trusty old computer with me today because I don't want to miss a thing on today's show. I want to shout out Choice 92.1 FM on the dial. I love choicefm.com. You can catch me on YouTube and also on Facebook. Go ahead and share this. I had two things that I wanted to talk about today. And then, of course, the announcement is made that J.D. Vance is going to be the vice presidential running mate to Donald J. Trump. And I would be remiss. I would be irrelevant. I wouldn't be keeping up with the times if I didn't start there. So I want to talk today about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. I want to continue to do a deep dive on Project 2025. But I want to talk about J.D. Vance and how I feel about that. So go ahead and share this with your friends. I'll be looking and reading your comments at break. And so, first of all, fun fact, J.D. Vance and I share something much more than initials, because you know I'm James David Gailliard. And but what we share is exactly that. That JD stands for James David. So this is James David Gailliard talking about James David Vance, who is the running mate for Donald Trump. Listen, real talk, probably a really smart decision. It gives me some anxiety. He's 39. He's a Iraq war vet. He's a Yale-trained attorney, a very wealthy and successful venture capitalist with a whole lot of very wealthy friends like billionaire PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel. You know, his wife is also a Yale-trained attorney from Indian immigrants, and so they have children who are will be considered children of color. You know, being white and Indian. And it's going to be very interesting. He's going to debate well. He's going to be very convincing. And I think he's very dangerous. The reason I think J.D. Vance is more dangerous than Donald Trump is because he's smart. Donald Trump is just, you know, selfish and ruthless and, you know, wealthy, you know, but he's not smart. J.D. Vance, on the other hand, is just flat out smart. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he and Kamala debate against each other. I think Kamala is actually a very good debater, and she can handle her own on stage. But I think J.D. Vance is going to really be a formidable opposition for her. I think the other interesting thing about J.D. Vance is that we now have a 39-year-old in the fray of things. And so, I mean, that's a millennial, right? And so you've got, you know, two very old men that are running for president. You have Kamala, who is, you know, probably about my age. And so she's knocking on the 60 door. And then you have this young, relatively young, for me, hey, 39 is young. And so you've got this millennial, and I think we're going to have a young generation really paying attention to him and some of what he says. I will say that he knows how to stir the pot of rhetoric. I was reading a tweet that just happened when former President Donald Trump, for the assassination attempt against him. And this is what J.D. Vance tweeted out. He says, "Today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist. And just as a FYI, I believe that Donald Trump is a fascist as well. But it's the rhetoric. It is the hate speech that he's so good at. And this is what he says. He's saying that Biden's position is that Donald Trump must be stopped at all costs. And that rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. So what he's doing is, and you have to watch how shrewd they are, because they'll take a comment, the president didn't make the smartest, statement when he said, we've got to focus and have a bullseye on Donald Trump. He wasn't talking about a bullseye so somebody would shoot him. He's talking about a bullseye so that we would be laser focused, that the Democratic Party would be laser focused about the importance of beating him in an election. But what J.D. Vance is so good at, and for those of you who don't know, you can Google it or whatever, but for those of you that don't go, he's a junior senator. I think he was elected in 2023, I think it was, for Ohio. He's originally from Ohio. So, he's using common vernacular, and he's using it as rhetoric to fuel political violence. And I think that is an indication of poor leadership. I think one of the worst things for me about J.D. Vance, and I don't know if any of you have asked me, but I'm telling you how I feel about J.D. Vance. I think one of the worst things about J.D. Vance is what they do in their pretension of criticizing division of their targeted political enemies, is that what they're really doing is they're trying to do two things. First of all, they're trying to stir the pot and inspire people to go ahead and be violent, but although that's the very thing they tend to criticize. So I want you to pay attention to what they do. I mean, what they do is they are decrying assassination attempt and shootings, and they should. Listen to me, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But while you're decrying assassination attempts and shootings, you're doing it in such a way for two things to happen. First of all, you do it in such a way to silence the criticism of anybody who doesn't think like you. And I'm going to talk about the danger of that that's being created in our country. So because there's so much volatility, there's so much anger, there's so much violence, there's so much resentment, there's so much, so much negativity here that people just are being quiet now. So what they're doing is they want to silence critics. They want to silence the criticism of anyone who thinks differently than them. And then the other, and that's to silence the criticism of media, of individuals, of anyone that's in political opposition. But while they decry all of that, it's supposedly to make our country more unified and safer, what they really do is further divide it and make it even more dangerous. And that's why J.D. Vance is so dangerous. Because J.D. Vance is going to say one thing, and if you don't measure it, if you don't process it, he's going to literally blow the whistle like you've never seen before. So he's young, he's well educated, and I think it's an interesting choice of J.D. Vance. It's also interesting because J.D. Vance was a never Trumper. And I just read something that my staff sent over to me, and I don't have it in front of me to quote it, and I won't read it directly. But, it was a person basically saying, hey, when I voted for Biden the first time, I just didn't want to vote for Trump, and I wanted anybody but Trump. Now they're saying what's interesting, like I didn't expect Biden to do a good job. I didn't expect him to create jobs. I didn't expect him to be able to pass nonpartisan legislation. I didn't expect him to be able to do so much with infrastructure. I didn't expect him to do things around student loan debt and increasing the wealth of the middle class. Like I didn't expect any of those things, and yet he produced them. I've said this to you before on the show. I'm going to say it to you again. Joe Biden has actually had one of the most successful presidencies in U.S. history. It's just that he's old, but it doesn't mean he's not effective. Moses stuttered. Joe Biden stutters. Look, I have concerns cognitively as well, but I'm also a big quality of work guy and what you have produced in terms of your body of work. And what the writer was saying was that I've gone from voting for Biden in the last election just because I didn't want Trump to actually now voting for him because it's clear that he's the better candidate in terms of his policy positions. And so I think that the selection of J.D. Vance is going to prove to be very interesting. Again, he is connected with very, very wealthy people. And it's just going to be interesting. He became very, very popular with a New York Times bestseller book. about growing up in Ohio and how he chronicled the social, economic, and cultural effects of the manufacturing decline in Ohio. And really, I think in a very real way, help people connect in with Donald Trump and how Donald Trump got elected to the presidency. I don't know if the movie was made into a Netflix movie. Don't know if it's still out there. But if it is, I certainly want to see it. Hillbilly Elegy. And so that's J.D. Vance, y'all. So let me move on, shift gears. For those of you just jumping in, I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show every Monday from 5 to 6 on Choice 92.1 FM, YouTube, and Facebook. Go ahead and share this with somebody. Whenever I take my first break, that's when I take a look at your questions on different platforms, and people will share on YouTube, even though I tend to spend more of my time on Facebook, but I'll get your comments from YouTube as well. I want to move on to the second thing. The first thing was J.D. Vance, his selection, and how I feel about it as the potential next vice president of these United States. The second thing I want to talk about today, as I have to talk about it before I jump into Project 2025, and I'm going to spend the whole second half of the show on Project 2025, and I hope you've been reading up. It is scary. It's scary. It's very scary. And I want to keep educating us about it because I want us to recognize how scary it is. And so I want to secondly talk about the shooting of former President Donald Trump. I want to say the obvious. The obvious thing that I want to say, that I want you to be able to say as well, is that violence just has no place in our governmental or political systems. I don't care if you are Republican or Democrat or unaffiliated. There is just no space for this in our democracy, our republic democracy, our democratic republic, rather. There is no space for that in our democratic republic. I do not support it in any way at all. I am thankful to God that the former president was only slightly harmed, and he will live and recover. I have a lot to say about that incident, and I will say it, but I don't want it to be lost on us that a person did lose their life, a person with a family, a person that was just going to do what they felt was right, which was to go support a political candidate that they believed in, and having to protect his family. Corey Comparator, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Comparatore might be how you pronounce it, who was a firefighter. He winds up dying. And so now there is a family without a dad and without a husband. And I want it to not be lost on us, the significance of these moments. You know, I am a believer that life matters. I've always been a believer that all lives matter, which is why I can always easily say Black Lives Matter. I can easily say Blue Lives Matter, because all lives matter. And so it burdens me, and I have prayed for his family. And I want us to, first of all, be focused on that. Yeah, there was an assassination attempt, but somebody's life was lost. And now I want to say a few things. So I've gotten the preliminaries out of the way, and so I won't get a whole bunch of, I probably still will get a bunch of hate email over this, but I want to say a few other things about this assassination attempt. The other thing I want to say about the assassination attempt is about the media. You know, the media has just got to stop fueling the flame. And this is why I'm glad you're listening and watching our show, because I really have created a data-driven format. Like, I'm about to run down Project 2025. I'm going to give you page numbers. And so it's not going to be just some interpretation of what might be. I'm going to be able to quote chapter and verse, to use the expression of me being in the church. I'm going to quote chapter and verse. And so we have to get to a point where we are not consuming all of our information from some far left or far right channels, where media only exists now, not so much to give us the truth about things, but be able to sell advertising. I mean, for all my people that watch me and watch Fox News, let me just say this to you. Fox News admitted in a court of law that they are not a news outlet, that they are an entertainment channel. They do not exist to give factual information. They have admitted, they have testified in court that we do not exist to give people factual information. We do not exist to give people actual news. We exist to create a commentary that will stir up the pot, that will create greater violence, that will confuse people because they won't turn the channel to see what somebody else is saying. And all you had to do is pay attention at the assassination attempt of the president and struggle through the watching. And I'll tell you, when I'm watching Fox News or I'm listening to a Patriot radio on Sirius XM before I go back and forth between Patriot and POTUS and Progress, I am struggling listening. And I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm waiting for Fox News to say, was this a white person that shot the president? And listen, can I say what most folk won't say in public? I'll say it out loud in the microphone. Microphone on, right? Let me say it out loud in the microphone. Black people had their fingers crossed and were praying to God that the person who shot Donald Trump was not black. Because black people were like, you know what? If this joker messed around, black person messed around and done this, it's going to be a civil war in our country. That is how fragile our democracy. For those of you that's willing to tell the truth and shame the devil, you know. And I'm going to tell you, there were some white people going like this. God, I hope it's a black person because this is going to give me a reason to pull out my assault rifle and be killing up a bunch of Negroes. That's the society we live in, family. That is the world we live in. And so Fox News knows that's the world we live in. Because they know it's the world we live in, they're not telling you the race. They're not telling you the party affiliation. They're not telling you that the person who shot the president, the former president, was another white male who was a registered Republican, because that's what he is. And so, you know, I want us to push back on these narratives. So the other thing I want to say about this, the Trump shooting, is that the media has got to stop fueling the flame. And you know, Biden has to do better. Like, we no longer live in a society where you can make statements, you know, like the president made around a bullseye being on the president. You know, but I want you to also pay attention to hypocrisy. The very media people, and Fox News did it, the very media people, conservative evangelical people, I want you to hear this, that are going out on social media. If you got something to say about the president, then unfriend me. If you got blah, blah, blah. It's all intimidation to get people that are critics and opposition to be silenced, while at the same time stirring up the pot of emotionalism and violence on a far-right group of people. That's the agenda. That's the play. And so while they're busy doing that, they're silent. So I've seen it. I have read it. They have quoted, they have requoted, they have parroted the president's statement around we have to have a bullseye on President Trump, knowing that man did not mean anybody killing him. And certainly, if that was the case, is a Republican, really? But this is my point. But yet not a word that when Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina stands in a pulpit speaking on a Sunday morning, who makes a very clear statement that some people just need to die. Do you hear me? Some people just need to die. He makes the statement. It's no conflict. When Trump makes a statement at a political rally that if I don't get elected, there's going to be a bloodbath. So there is this extremism and there is this conflict and this hypocrisy is the word I'm looking for, this hypocrisy of interpretation. And I'm going to go back to J.D. Vance. And this is why J.D. Vance's candidacy is going to be so dangerous to this country. Not because he's not smart, not because he doesn't have experiences, lived experiences, not because he's not a good family man, but because he knows how to blow the whistle in a way, I'm going to keep saying it till you can rehearse it and say it yourself. He knows how to speak in such a way that will silence criticism and silence political opposition, while at the same time stirring the emotions and the violence tendencies of those within his party ranks. And he's going to do it eloquently. You think Trump has created a United States that is polarized, wait till J.D. Vance gets to talking. So, yeah. The other issue I've got with the president, let me see where I'm at on time. Okay, I got a couple minutes, 2 minutes left. Let me just say this. I'm going to finish because when I come back, I'm going to be all over Project 2025. The other thing about the president's attempted assassination, by the way, Thomas Matthews Crooks was the gunman, 20 years old, I believe, registered Republican. I think there's some things that we need to talk about. The fact that you can legally purchase an assault rifle in this country. I mean, you're talking about at some point we become victims of our own policies. And like it or not, that's exactly what is happening here. You cannot create a public policy that is attractive and formidable and convenient and positive and well-meaning to the NRA, the National Rifle Association, and at some point you don't think a gun is ever going to be aimed at you or your family. That's craziness. We have some of the worst gun policies in the world. And so, look, God, y'all know I'm a preacher, and you reap what you sow. And as devastating as this is, and as much as I wish it did not happen, we don't get to bypass the natural laws of reaping and sowing. That's just what the Bible teaches us. At some point, it's got to come back on me or somebody I love. The other thing I'm going to say about this, and then I'm going to take my first break. The other thing I'm going to say about this is I have a security detail at my church. And I can tell you now that, first of all, it should be a bunch of folk fired at Secret Service already this morning. A bunch. If they have not fired a bunch of people at Secret Service, I don't know what's going on. That had to have been the worst extraction ever. The moment that president was shot, he was no longer in charge. There were two things that needed to happen immediately. Number one, there was a group going after the one who fired the bullet. And number two, there was a group getting the president out of there. You can hear him putting his shoes on, pumping his fist. There's no possible way that should have happened. And so that part of it for me felt very staged. I'm sorry. It just did, because that's not how extractions work. That moment that he got shot, the detail was running that. And their only job was to get him out of there. Not to let him get his shoe on, not to let him pump his fist, not to say nothing. Their job was to get him out of there. So the fact that they didn't do that, I'm wondering, are they either that poorly trained or was there some discussion prior? I'm just saying. Look, this is James Gailliard, and you're watching the James Gailliard Show. I've been talking about J.D. Vance. I've been talking about the attempted assassination of President Trump. When I come back, get ready, put your seatbelt on. I'm going to be talking all about Project 2025 right here, Soul 92.1 FM. Let somebody know you're on. I'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Hey, family, we are back, and thank you for being with me. I'm thrilled that you're with me. This is James Gailliard Show. I'm James Gailliard. I've talked a little bit about J.D. Vance and my initial position about J.D. Senator Vance, a junior senator from Ohio, who is the vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. And the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee is going on as we speak on the air. And so I want to talk a little. I talked a little bit about the assassination attempt, and I'm done with those things. I want to go back to Project 2025. And I want to go back to Project 2025 because what I don't want us to do is stop talking about it. And nor do I want us to stop. I want us to be educated about it. I don't want us to be nervous. I don't want us to be emotional. I want us to be educated. I want us to really understand what's going on with it. And so I'm going to start in a place that's going to sound a little uncomfortable for you because I'm a pastor. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, where is he going with this? So let me give you these. I love this poem, this statement, really. It was a German Lutheran pastor. And he said, first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, but I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Part of the reason I'm sharing this is because it may not feel like it directly impacts me, and maybe not even some of you, although it's going to impact a lot of you. I want you to know that I'm speaking out because of what Elie Wiesel said. Neutrality helps the oppressor. It never helps the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor. It never helps the tormented. And sometimes we must interfere. Whenever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, we must speak up. And so Project 2025 is the Heritage Foundation's think tank. It's their 922-page document that chronicles what the day one administration would look like for the next super evangelical conservative president. And what we have to recognize is this document doesn't go away when Trump loses the election in November, and he will lose the election in November. But it's still going to be on the table, and they'll start implementing. They have already started implementing lots of this on the state level. This is why, as soon as Roe versus Wade was overturned, there were state laws popping up immediately. Why? Because they were already ready. And we have to do a better job of this. I want us to recognize the danger of this legislation, and which is what the vote is really about. This is not a vote about Trump versus Biden. Stop that. It is not. It is a philosophical, ideological vote. This is a difference of two administrations. There's no guarantee either one of them would live out the administration. The issue becomes, can someone who then takes on the philosophy of my administration, which is why J.D. Vance is going to be so dangerous. J.D. Vance literally went from, he literally called in 2016, J.D. Vance himself said that Donald Trump may be America's Hitler. Did you hear what I said? That's what J.D. Vance said. But he's an opportunist, and he's got an opportunity. So you don't go from thinking somebody's America's Hitler to all of a sudden thinking I got this guy wrong. Come on. J.D. Vance jumped on the bandwagon. He saw some opportunity. He's going to probably do very, very well in Republican politics. And we're going to see him in some capacity. And for those people that feel like, well, the president, Donald Trump, doesn't have anything to do with Project 2025, that's the Heritage Foundation. That's a lie, because Donald Trump has just identified a person that was one of the authors of Project 2025 as a potential for one of his cabinet positions. So wake up, people. Wake up, wake up, wake up. On page 4, I'm starting at page 4, but I'm going to go all the way down through a whole lot of pages. On page 4, for those of you that are just tuning in, I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. I'm trying to see your comments. They tell me there's a bunch out there, but for some reason they're not letting me see them. And so let me just go through this, and then I'll come back to your comments. On page 4, now this goes back to the statement I made about we have to speak up for other people. Here's promise number 1. This is the first promise of the Heritage Foundation's document: to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. I don't know any human being disagrees with that statement. The first promise, now I want you to pay attention to how crafty and shrewd this is. Number 1, to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Underscore family. Now, this is what they say. The American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers. Stop right there. I need you to pay attention. Pay attention. Now, look, I went through this with y'all last week. I am a heterosexual male. I have no interest in a personal homosexuality. I have no interest in none of that. Don't none of that do nothing for me. Man can't do nothing for me. But that does not mean that I want to see homosexual people's rights stripped away from them. I may not, look, so when they come for homosexuals, now I'm going somewhere deep. Are y'all ready to handle this today? They are expecting a group of people who are homophobic to not support and to be silent about anti-homosexual LGBTQ+. But I want you to pay attention and we have to exegete the document. Exegete the document. Our objective is to restore the family. Second line, the American family is in crisis. Third line, 40% of children are born to unmarried mothers. That is not them doing further qualification. This is what they're doing. They are stating what a family is and what a family isn't. They are saying our objective is to restore family. Then they say the family's in crisis. And then they say children are born to unmarried mothers. That's to suggest that they're not a family. And I'm going to prove it to you in the document. So this Project 2025 is not just going after LGBTQ plus people. I need you to hear this. It is going after any human being that is not in a nuclear family that consists of a man, a woman, and a child. It is going after childless heterosexual couples. It is certainly going after single mothers and single fathers. The people that should be in the biggest uproar right now are single mothers and single fathers. Then he says, including more than 70% of black children. I'm reading page 4 of the document. He says there's no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. So they start further going that if you are in an environment where you are raising a son by yourself, according to the Project 2025 document, if it's you and your 2 sons in the house, if it's you and your 2 daughters in the house, if it's you and a son and a daughter in the house, according to Project 2025, you are not a family. And you are not their objective. And they're going to strip from you every program that is identified to be able to support you. And they're going to redirect all of those funds, all of those services, all of those agencies to a nuclear family that's mother, father, and child. This is the danger of this. And so let me drill down. Fatherlessness is one of the principal sources of American poverty, crime, mental illness, teen suicide, substance abuse, rejection of the church, and high school dropouts. Now, let me tell you something. That statement in and of itself is not wrong. And this is why documents like this are so dangerous. This is why somebody like a J.D. Vance is going to be so dangerous, because they're going to get up and they're going to give a speech and they're going to say, y'all, when children don't have fathers, it forces children into poverty. They wind up statistically more likely to commit crimes. They have greater incidence of mental illness, and their teen suicide rate is higher. And 100% of that is going to be right. But pay attention to what comes next. And then they go on to say, we've never seen a thriving, healthy, free, and prosperous society where children grew up without their married parents. Did you hear this? The world has never seen a thriving, healthy, free. I'm not making this up. I'm reading the document. The world has never seen a thriving, healthy, free, and prosperous society where children grow up without their married parents. So they're saying that the only legitimate family is married parents. Now, look, I believe in the family. My parents stayed together through my whole childhood. I'm grateful to God that they did. And this is what they say they're going to do about it. The next conservative president I'm reading from Project 2025, beginning of page 4, must understand that using the government alone to respond to symptoms of the family crisis is a dead end. Federal power, did you hear this? Must be wielded to reverse the crisis and rescue kids from familial breakdown. And so they start talking about some things they're going to do. So this is what they say we're going to do. Some of the most obvious and longstanding goals is it's the tax code, it says, and instilling work requirements and food stamps. But we must go further. It's time for policymakers to elevate family authority, formation, and cohesion at their top priority, and even use government power, including the tax code, to restore the American family. Did you hear this? At the last show last week, I told you that your taxes would drastically be increased in the middle class so that taxes could be decreased by wealthy corporations and wealthy people. But what I didn't tell you is that the tax code was going to shift to become more favorable for a heterosexual male, female, and child than it would be for a single mother or a single father that's working hard to provide for their children. So do you really think if you are in a home, and listen, y'all, this is not a religious conversation. I want to see couples married. I want to see couples having children. I want to see families thriving. But I also recognize we live in a culture where not every couple makes it. Can I just say this real quick? Part of the policy positions is that there are situations within policy now where if a woman is in an environment of domestic violence and she leaves because of the threat to her and her children, there's going to be a shift of public policy, a shift of regulations that will then strip any benefits that she takes with her so that it can force her back into the marriage because the policy positions are leaning more towards heterosexual people. They would rather you be in a marriage and have your husband beat your head in order for you to qualify for food stamps, than for you to leave him, decide I'm going to take an entry-level position to pull my life and my family back together. They're going to literally strip benefits from you when you make a decision to save your life, because the only group of people that matters in this document are heterosexual people with a child. Wake up, family. This is James Gailliard. You are watching the James Gailliard Show. I'm a little bit on my soapbox, but I've been busy and I finally got around to reading the document. And as I'm getting around to reading the document, I'm blown away by what I'm reading. So they say we're going to use the tax code to restore the American family. Well, the American family for them is only heterosexual, male, female, and child. So if you're LGBTQ, you're not family, and benefits and tax codes will be used against you. If you're a single woman raising a child, tax code is going to be used against you. You're a single guy raising your children, tax code is going to be used against you. If you get divorced, tax code is going to be used against you. Are y'all hearing me? All right, let me jump on down a little further, and I'll get some of you what y'all talking about in a little bit. But page 449 of the document, I told you it's a 922-page document. Page 449 is about the Department of Health and Human Services. They have a goal. Goal 3, I told you what goal 1 was. Goal 3 is the promotion of stable and flourishing married families. Now, again, look, I believe in marriage. I'm an advocate of marriage. I'm a supporter of marriage. What I will not do is tell you that because you are a single man or a single woman, your family is less important than my family. What I'm not willing to do is to say, because your marriage didn't work out, you don't have the same rights to opportunity as I do. That is what this document is saying. That is the extremism of this document. So page 449 is Department of Health and Human Services. It's about promotion of stable and flourishing married families. Now, listen, I want you to hear, because see, y'all don't believe me. Y'all don't believe me. So because what some of you are saying, you're exegeting this document, but are you sure you're not exegeting it in a way of your own interpretive bias? Well, I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad you're paying attention. So guess what they do? They define family for us. Imagine that. They're not even hiding it. So page 449 starts talking about Department of Health and Human Services, and they now literally are defining family. This is what they say. Where are my folk out there? Melissa, Jennifer, LaShawn, Corey. Where are my folk? Where are my folk? Melissa, LaShawn, here's my people. This is how they define marriage, family. This is how they define family. Families comprised of a married mother, father, and their children. Unfortunately, family policies and programs under President Biden's Health and Human Services have an agenda that focuses on LGBTQ plus equity, and it subsidizes single motherhood. It disincentivizes work. Anyway, penalizes marriage. It's not the case. These policies should be repealed and replaced by policies that support the formation of stable married nuclear families. So they're saying, y'all, that every policy we create in the federal government will only be directed toward married heterosexual people with children. That is what this document is saying. I'm going to keep going and give you example upon example. They talk about working fathers. It is really, really important that fathers work. I mean, y'all know, you've heard me talk about work ethic. This is what the document says. Working fathers are essential to the well-being and development of their children. Who disagrees with that? Nobody disagrees with that. But the United States is experiencing a crisis of fatherlessness that is ruining our children's future. In the overwhelming number of cases, fathers insulate children from physical and sexual abuse, financial difficulty, or poverty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what they say. If there's benefits being directed, put all this together. If there's benefits, I'm going to show it to you later on the document. If you are on Medicaid, or you're on food stamps, what they're saying is that if there is a man that you're on food stamps because he's not providing to the household, instead of us supporting you while you get on your feet, we're going to strip those benefits away from you because you have a man that you're attached to that does not work. Like, that's your fault. And then let me tell you what else they're saying. You can't make this stuff up. It's almost like the Handmaid's Tale. And listen, let me just be really clear. I'm a Bible believing, Bible teaching. Like, if this was a document that came out of the Catholic Church, I don't know that it would bother me quite so much. But this is a document that is used for the United States government. The United States government, separation of church and state, you don't have the right governmentally to tell me who to love. You don't have the right governmentally to tell me how I'm going to live my life. And you don't have the right to penalize me because I love somebody different than you, or because I fell on hard times and the man I was married to left and is not supporting me anymore. You don't get the right to penalize me for that. That is my issue with this document. It says homes with non-related boyfriends present. Listen to this. Homes with non-related boyfriends present are among the most dangerous place for a child to be raised. So what they're saying is, and see, every one of these statements then eventually links back to a policy position. It links back to a federal program. It links back to a department or agency. What they're saying is, if you're trying to get health insurance for your child, say you're trying to get on Medicaid because you work 30 hours and where you work, they don't provide you with medical benefits. What they're saying is that you have the potential, and you know, look, you're working your life out. People hear me talk about shacking up all the time. You're trying to work your life out. You living with a dude. Y'all trying to figure it out. The United States government is going to intervene in your family, in your life, and they're going to say, well, if you want to get on Medicaid, that boyfriend can't live with you no more. That is a moral, social decision. That is not a governmental decision. That's what these documents are saying. It talks about surrogate parents. Yo, I had so much to cover with this. Are y'all paying attention to me? Let me make sure y'all paying attention to me now. In the context of current and emerging reproductive technologies, Health and Human Service policy should never place the desires of adults over the rights of children to be raised by the biological fathers and mothers who conceived them. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a reasonable statement. Here's the problem with it. What they're saying is that they're going to craft policies that if you are a surrogate parent and a man and a woman cannot have a child, and you have that child for them, and then you adopt that child, if that child then decides, even though there's been a whole legal transaction, it could be that the parent that was the surrogate really may be on hard times. They could wind up being drug addicted. They could wind up in any situation at all. The policies are going to benefit and lean toward the biological parents, not the parents that are surrogate, not the parents that adopted them, not the parent. So they're going to develop a whole system of policies that are that unless you are the biological mother and father married, let me say that, the married biological mother and father of a child, they're going to create an entire political, legislative, regulatory system that will work against a group of people that are not biologically, heterosexually married with a child. Page 476. Page 476, Melissa said, I was a single mother once after an abusive marriage. I can't imagine these policies being in place. It's absurd. This is needed, making it real passage. It is absurd, Melissa. It is absurd. So let me keep reading. Page 476, the Office of Child Support Enforcement. So, y'all, we have the Aid to Families with Dependent Children, AFDC. It was established in 1935 to assist single-parent families who are suffering financially from the loss of a breadwinning husband and a father. Now, this is what they claim. They claim that within 2 decades, the majority of families receiving aid were dependent because of paternal abandonment rather than death. And today, nearly a third of American children live without a father present in the home, and a fourth of them are enrolled to receive child support. So it goes on to say that the glaring issue in child support enforcement today is a non-resident's father's ability to provide full or consistent child support payments. The literature reflects this divide as fathers who have been categorized as deadbeat dads that are now dead broke. And this is what they're going to say was going to happen at the Office of Child Support Enrollment. And so they say they're going to allow child welfare funding. I want you to hear this. I need you to hear this. So we're tired of giving money in support of families where the dad is just a deadbeat. That it doesn't matter that there is a legitimate need there. What matters is that the father is not meeting the need. And if the father is not meeting the need, we're going to redirect budgeted money. Now listen to the language of the document. We're going to redirect a budgeted money. Here it is. I'm quoting. So you can't tell me I'm being emotional. I'm quoting the document. It's data. To allow child welfare funding to be used for marriage and relationship education. So if you now need funding to help your child because you need food, you need clothes, you need like a basic need of society. What they're saying is we can't give you that money, that $200 a month for shoes, that $200 a month for insurance, but we can make $200 a month available for you to use it for marriage and relationship education. So while you're busy being hungry, you know, you're going to leave that man because he's beating you. We can't help you any financially to pay the bills, but we can help you financially to get relationship counseling and marriage education. They don't call it counseling. They call it marriage and relationship education. So then they literally lay out what Congress should do. I hope y'all, I'm not watching y'all comments yet. So they literally lay out what Congress can do. So this is what it says. Congress should adopt the following recommendations from a report issued by members of the Congress's Joint Economic Committee. So this is, one of them is Title II. Title II of the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. Because children are far more likely to experience abuse when they are raised outside of the married parent family. This is unbelievable to me. I'm going to read it directly from the document. Children are far more likely to experience abuse when they are raised outside of their married parent family. Title II of the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act provides grants to communities for the purpose of preventing child abuse and neglect. And one of the stated purposes for which the grant can be used is for efforts to increase family stability. However, Congress should change the law to make it clear that Title II funding can be used for healthy marriage and relationship education. I'm not making this up. A man and a wife, a man and a woman are married. They have a child. He is beating her. He is on drugs. He is committing crimes, and there's a violent environment. But because the only legitimate family definition for this Project 2025, don't even get me started with Liberty University being a part of this document. That's a whole nother conversation. Because the only legitimate form of a family for them is a man, a woman, heterosexual man, woman having a biological child, you're getting beat, all this violence and everything that's bad in this family. And we want Congress to redirect any money that would have gone to you to get out of the experience and the abuse. We want to redirect the funding for you to stay there so it can be used for a healthy marriage and for relationship education. And it's interesting to me because in some regards, it's almost like the government is acting like the church. Government is acting like the church, and it wants to do all this relationship education and all this. And so this is a scary document, y'all. Good Lord, I'm almost up on time. I'm sorry, y'all. This is James Gailliard. It's the James Gailliard Show. I'm going to come back with our last segment. Share this with somebody. I'm going to look at your comments. I'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Well, this went so fast today. I am reviewing Project 2025 in detail. I'm reading from the document. I talked about J.D. Vance. And so if you haven't had a chance to check the beginning of the show out, I have some pretty strong positions on J.D. Vance, and I hopefully give you some actual reasons why I quoted him from his Twitter account. And then I talked a little bit about my concerns about the violence in our political systems, and I'm grateful that former President Trump is going to be well and okay. And then I just spent time on Project 2025. Page 482. Is on the Office of Head Start. This is what the first line says. Eliminate the Head Start program. Now, we all know, family, how important early development is for children. And so, literally, and how important this program is for lower wealth families. It says point blank, Head Start is established and funded to support low-income families. So a program that is established to support low-income families, this is what Project 2025 document says. Eliminate the program. Now, listen, I'm not stupid. I recognize the program needs improvement, but you improve the program. You don't just eliminate the program. It literally says to eliminate the programs. I'm not going to get into the classifications of thousands of federal employees that are going to lose their jobs. And those jobs are going to be given to loyalists to the Republican Party and loyalists day one to Trump's administration. I'm not going to get into some of that right now because I'm running right up on time. But I want us to recognize how dangerous this document is. And I want us to be mindful and educated about it. And so let me close on this. Title I. LaShawn is on here. I mean, there are educators here. We all know, and if you don't know, get with your local school board how important Title I funding is. Title I is federal dollars that go into lower income school districts. And what they're recommending is that the dollars, instead of be identified into these lower income districts, that they be turned into block grants, and the block grants would then go to the state. And then the states would determine what vouchers they would give. So all of the money that's Title I money federally going down right now, they're saying make it into a block grant, give it to the state, and then let the state issue vouchers. And so literally it would be a total gutting, not only of the Department of Education, but a total gutting of public education. So then it says in the document, I'm quoting, states should assume decision-making control over how to provide a quality education to children from low-income families. Now, I know on the surface that sounds right, but listen, the only reason the state will do certain things for low-income families is because the there is a requirements attached to the federal money. It's called an asset. Remember when COVID came down, and when that COVID vaccine came down, it was referred to as a federal asset. A federal asset means the origin of it is federally, and because it's the federal government's asset, they get to determine the distribution of it. That's how Title I program works. It's a federal asset. So federal money comes down into the state. When it comes down into the state, it's attached to it because it's an asset, it has attached to it requirements. So even though the state may not have an appetite for some of those requirements, if you don't follow those requirements, you don't get the money. And I'm not suggesting we don't need to revisit how we do things. But in order, literally, and I want you to hear this, school meal programs. I'm quoting, I'm going to end on this. I'm quoting from Project 2025 document. I need you to hear this. They characterize school meal programs. I've seen some of your posts, and we're like, man, thank God we're going to have free lunch available for our kids or free breakfast available for kids. This is what Project 2025 says. Some of the most wasteful federal programs in Washington are school meal programs. So, and let me tell you what they're saying. The document says this. If we don't like how a school teaches on gender, this is in the document, on gender at birth, rather than sexual orientation and gender identity, it's the language. You know, this is that whole LGBTQ plus thing. I want you to hear this. I'm really done when I say this. He says, we object to the feds withholding those funds from schools. This is what they say. Especially objects, they're going to withhold meal program money from schools that we don't like how they refer to gender identity. So it's a little mind-boggling that this is where we're at. This was James Gailliard. I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. And I spent our time together on J.D. Vance, on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, and on some deep dives into Project 2025. I have so much more to teach you about this. Read some of the document yourself. I'll look at your comments. I'm out of clock, but I'm not out of content. I'm out of time, but I'm not out of talk. I'll see you next Monday right here on Choice 92.1 FM. Share this with someone. I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. Make it an outstanding night.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.